This is part 4 with respect to the Substance Designer section of the Dungeon Corridor where I've been making these bricks. And in this video we're going to finish up by doing the cracks, and then I'm going to show you how I use this in the Dungeon Corridor, and I'll give you a sneak peek of the final renders if you stick around for that. And in a future video I'll talk about maybe my lighting and some of the additional modeling I did and stuff like that. So for right now we're going to finish up this graph. So this is what we have. We've got the tiles and the chipping, we've got some damage, and we've got some holes. And I did that in video 1 through 3, and we also have a very little bit of coloration. And so now we're going to do the cracks. Again, this is a very stylized, cartoony kind of view. There are more advanced ways of doing all of this, but let's just get to it. Okay, so I'm going to press the space bar and type in cells 2, and that's going to give me the sort of almost stained glass kind of look. I'm going to change the scale to around 7 maybe, and then we're going to decrease the edge width like this. So those are going to form our basic cracks. Yeah, we'll go for something like that. I'm going to pull out of here and type in bevel. I'm going to leave the default values. You can't really see much right now, but that will help just to sort of smooth it out a little bit. And I'm going to pull out and I'm going to do auto levels, and you should be able to see them now. And this is what we're coming up with. So we have some cracks, but now we have to deform them a little bit. So I'm going to pull out and start typing in warp. So we're going to create a warp, but the warp is going to require an input here. And for our input, we will use the familiar purlin noise. So drag that down there. I'll just connect it. I'll double click on the warp so we can see the effect, and single click on purlin noise so we can adjust the scale. We don't want this. I'm going to pull the scale down, and as I do that, you'll start to see how those edges, those lines, those cracks are being deformed. I can bring the disorder up a little bit. Put that down at around 5 or so. Alright, so we're starting to deform our cracks. Let's do a little bit more though. Let's pull out and start typing in directional warp. So we can use this, we can change the angle and the intensity, but this requires an input as well. I'm going to leave that one as is, and we're going to do one more, and we'll move on from there. For this one, I'm going to switch to about here. I'll just drag the intensity down, and we'll do another purlin noise. And I'll leave it at the default for the moment, and we'll plug that in, and we'll double click here. Now we see the cumulative effect. And here we can adjust scale if we want, but I want it sort of up there, a little bit of disorder, and I'll take the intensity just down a little bit. So this is what we're getting for our cracks. Alright, so we are going to take this and let's pull out and get a blend going. For this directional warp, I'm going to take the squares here, and we're going to pull that up, and I can move up and I can drop that in there. So we have that going into there. I'm going to click there, and I'm going to press Alt and click, and that'll put that little dot connector there. We're going to use that in a moment. But let's come down. We're going to connect that to there. We're going to have one more blend, and we're going to put it onto here. So I'm going to select that, press space, get a blend going, and take this and drag it into here. And we will put this one is going to be on add. You'll see that in a moment what we're going to do. You can start to see the effects here with those all over the place. This one is going to be on multiply, and we adjust opacity and all that, but I'm going to leave that there for now. Now, I don't want cracks all over every brick, and of course we can come back as well here if we want and make changes to the cell. We can change everything, but you know, if you change the scale, just look at what happens. Alright, we don't exactly want that, so I'm going to come back to about 6 or 7. We'll try 6. Alright, nice thick cracks, and you can adjust the edge width as well. So 0.4 we can try. Alright, so in order to get those cracks on, you know, individual bricks and not on everything, I'm going to add on here. I'm going to pull out of this blend, and I'm going to add a histogram select. And I'm going to use as an input this little dot connector that came from down here. And already you can see that the cracks are gone from some of the bricks. And you can click on that and then come over here. We've got these three things that we can change. I can bring the contrast up and leave that there, and then just manipulate the position and the range to get those cracks on separate bricks. And I'm going to leave it probably there for this. You can play around with as much as you want. But now I have cracks on some of the bricks and not on all of the bricks. That's coming into this blend. We can adjust the add here, and that can change things. I'm going to leave that there, and that is the effect that I'm going to go for. Let's switch over to maybe the rounded cylinder and have a look at that. I've got my bricks sticking out. We adjusted the tessellation in a previous video, and I've got them with the chipping and with the damage, and now we have some cracks. I want to save this, and we're going to use this now in Blender. But before I do that, I'm going to go to one other piece of software. I'm going to actually bring it into Substance Painter, and we're going to look at it there. So how do we get this out of Designer and into Painter? Well, what are the outputs? What have we actually created? This stuff at the very end. I've got a base color, I've got a normal map, I've got ambient occlusion, and I've got height. These four maps are going to be used in Substance Designer. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to create, as I right click here, an sbsar file. So I'm going to publish an sbsar file. I'm going to click there, and I'm going to find where I want that. I'm going to put that in here. Dungeon Quarter Wall Video 3, sbsar, save. I'm just going to click OK. Now I'm going to come over to Substance Painter, and I'm going to load up my mesh for Blender, OpenGL, select, and the mesh that I want here is this wall top final, and I'm going to just bring it in, and you will see what it is. It's just this. It is mirrored to the other side, so that's my arched top. Now, I should tell you, I'm going to come over to Blender where I've got the same thing. I should tell you that this is subdivided here. All right, it wasn't just a long, curved plane type thing. And I'm going to have to do a little bit more work to get this to work properly. But we'll come back to Substance Painter. I'm going to delete that layer, and I'm going to bake the mesh maps. I'll do this at 2K. I'll uncheck ID, and I'll bake. So I want to get those bricks now into Substance Painter. So I'm going to click here and add resources, and I'm going to come up to my Substance Designer. I don't want this SBS file, that's the Substance Designer file. I want this sbsar, the thing that we published. So I'm going to click open. It's one thing. I'm going to define it as a base material just to my current session. And here it is. All right, you can see the preview there. I'm going to drop it on. The scale is wrong, but it's loaded all of those maps, the height, the normal, the ambient occlusion, etc., etc. I'm going to change the scale to about 6. I'm going to change the rotation to 90 or so. Let's just have a look inside, and you can see. Now, they look shiny and metallic, and they don't look all that sharp. Well, that's because I'm going to adjust the roughness in Blender. I'll have it around 3/4, and there'll be no metallic. All right, so we will do that in Blender. And what we want to do next, though, is actually get these bricks to sort of look like they're pushing out because it's flat. And then I'll change the resolution. We can have a look at that. And we'll change the HDRI image so we can see it in different lightings. And then we'll export it from here, and we'll have a look in Blender. So what I'm going to do is click on this second icon here, the shader settings, and scroll down to displacement and tessellation. Tessellation, when we saw that word in Substance Designer, we're going to just increase that. I'm going to increase it all the way. And the height, just be careful here. I'm going to go for something like 0.005. Let's try that at first. In order for this to work, you do have to have a subdivided mesh. It's got to have enough geometry in order for this to work. So there's that. Let's try maybe, instead of 0.5, let's try 0.1 there. Let's leave it at that and see. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to up the resolution to 2K. And that looks a little bit better. Just don't, again, mind the shininess of this. Let's try a different view. Let's try this cave one. Let's just see what, yeah, just different lightings. All right, at any rate, we're going to see how this would all work in Blender. All right, so we've got our thing there. We're at 2K. That's good. That's good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to export this. So let's have a look at that. File, export textures. Wall 2, that's fine. We can leave it called that. We'll change this in a minute. Let's look at the output templates. I tend to use PBR metallic roughness. So let's do that. I've got base color, roughness, metallic, normal, height, and emissive. All right, well, the first thing I want to do is I don't have any emissive, but I do have AO, and I'm going to see if the AO comes out from here. So I'm going to grab this ambient occlusion and drop it down and switch that to gray. And the normal right now is DirectX. I want OpenGL, so I'm going to drag that out, release it, and choose RGB. So we should be good for Blender. All right, we're going to be exporting this stuff. And right now it's not saying that it's going to give me the AO. So that's okay. Maybe I'm tired or something like that. I'm going to switch this to 16. We can get the AO another way around. So I'm on probably the wrong one. So let's do that and let's have a look at this. Ah, there's the AO. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to choose an output directory. I'm going to click export. And here are the files that it has exported for me. All right, let's go over to Blender now, into the shading tab, and I'm going to click on my principled and Shift Control T, and let's go find those textures. I'm going to select base color through roughness, principled setup, and it's putting them on. However, we don't need the metallic or the roughness. We can do that another time, and I'm going to put my roughness up at a 0.6, 0.7 or so. You can see this is all looking very, very nice, very stylized, a cartoon, I admit, but that's what I'm going for. All right, we will use this displacement later. I have used Eevee quite a bit for my videos and my renders, but this time we're going to use cycles to get the displacement to work right. So let's get that ambient occlusion in there. Let's Control plus so we can see this. We've got our base color. I could just delete these, but I'm just going to leave them. All right, let's take this one and Shift D to duplicate it and pull it up. Let's press N to open the side with it selected. Let's change the label to AO, just so we know that's ambient occlusion. And let's make sure that we connect this. So we're using the UVs, and let's open it. There it is. We're opening that manually, that one. And we're going to choose non-color for this. To get it to mix, we're going to add a color mix RGB, drop that in there, and drag the color down to there, and switch this to multiply. Let's come back. Okay, so everybody is in there now, looking good, looking very blue. Yeah, so now, we don't see the bricks projecting at all. Let's come over here first of all. Make sure that we are in cycles and choose experimental. We're going to have to probably add a bit more geometry, so I'm going to choose subdivision surface here. Make sure adaptive subdivision is on. I'll turn this up to 3, and that we should be good. We can switch that to simple if you don't want the edges curved like that. And let's get this to work. Let's look at the displacement now. This is going to be too much, so I'm going to change the mid-level to 0, and the scale we could try 0.2 to start, maybe even less. Still don't see anything. Well, that's because we have to be in rendered view. So here you can see the material preview. I'm just going to save. I've thrown some lights in just so we can see the effect. Let's try rendered view in cycles, and of course when you actually render you would see it, and you can see those bricks are pushing out here and there. All right, and that might even be too much. It probably is, in my opinion. I would probably come down to 0.1, maybe even less. Let's try that again. Okay, just keep in mind that the lighting and stuff is not ideal for this to work. But that is that. So we created in Substance Designer, we got it into Substance Painter where we could have manipulated it more, and we've got it working in Blender. So let's have a look at how it would actually look in a final scene. this is how it looks in the final scene. So here are my bricks that I created with the scratches, with the little bit of grunge on there, with the holes. The bricks are offset, and that is the look that I was going for this arched wall here. I've done a similar thing along here. I've just made some adjustments to the graph here. Instead of having multiple bricks, I wanted just 2, and a couple other changes to make those side ones. These bottom ones, I'll probably do a video on that. They're related to these ones as well. I got rid of the holes, and I made a few changes, and it's got this effect where they slope down into the ground. And I did not go through, this is not geometry, where I went through and I said, I'll get rid of that one, I'll get rid of that one. That one's all done in Substance Designer. But this is sort of a common thing that people tend to do, and that's what I wanted to show you as well. But there is my scene, and I'm going to talk more about this in another video. So that's going to wrap it up for this particular video, just creating the bricks in Substance Designer and getting them to work in Blender. So I'll come back and I'll show you another view of the scene, and I'll talk about my lighting and a little bit more about materials and some modeling and stuff like that. So thanks very much for watching the series on Substance Designer. I know it was very basic and very simple, but it gives us a really cool effect and something that I'm probably going to be using quite often. All right, take care.